Hey, what's ready? Welcome back to News Dose, and we were expecting some fun news from Xbox today. You know, if anybody was going to have a big week this week at Gamescom, it was probably going to be them, which is always interesting to me just because I know a lot of people don't like Xbox, but they are pretty consistent with their showcases and their events. They do a pretty good job, and, well, they dropped a few surprises today and also fully unveiled their new Xbox handheld, though there is one caveat, which we're going to cover all of that today. What I wasn't expecting to talk about, though, is another price hike, this time for the PlayStation 5. Yeah, I remember the days when we used to see price decreases over the time. I know, crazy thing to think about, but yeah, this generation has been truly terrible for us consumers. It's honestly very frustrating, and we're going to get into all of that as well. First, though, I do want to thank my supporters on Patreon and on YouTube memberships. Thank you just so much for what you do, and you will receive this video through early access. Let's go and get right into things, though, starting off with some Switch 2 news. Of course, they revealed Kirby Air Riders yesterday, which honestly, I was much more impressed than what I initially expected to be. I never really got into the original title back on the GameCube, but Sakurai, I mean, he has a truly masterful mind. The guy is an absolute genius for his over-the-top and meticulous game design. So maybe I shouldn't be surprised because he really brought all of his Smash Brothers expertise over to Kirby Air Riders. There's a lot of very similar design. The animations are absolutely fantastic, and even though it's simplistic on the surface, there seems to be a lot of hidden depth underneath that I think a lot of gamers will enjoy for a long time coming. The only thing is that this game is going to launch for $70, which is kind of the new norm for Nintendo games, but I do wonder how the overall market is going to react to that when it releases. Now, the reason I say that is because Sakurai himself mentioned that Nintendo approached him to work on Kirby Air Riders, and his response was a lot like a lot of ours. You know, that they already have Mario Kart, and it is very similar. So he asked Nintendo, are you sure you want to do that? And Nintendo said, yeah. So he did. But what I'm trying to say is that he does understand that there could be a dilemma for this game. It might be different if it wasn't for Mario Kart, but they just released Mario Kart World a few months back, and that could potentially impact this game. This holiday, there's going to be a lot of consumers that buys into the Switch 2, and, you know, are they going to pick up Kirby Air Riders, or are they just going to pick up Mario Kart World? And I guess we'll see. In my opinion, though, I think that he did a pretty good job at differentiating Kirby Air Riders, but at the end of the day, we're just going to have to kind of wait and see how that more casual audience reacts to it when it releases on November 20th. Now, speaking of Nintendo, Elden Ring for the Switch 2 is playable at Gamescom, but unfortunately, there does seem to be some oddities around how they're handling it. Apparently, Bandai Namco isn't allowing people to record footage at Gamescom, which already doesn't exactly seem like a great sign, especially given the reaction has been very poor online. A lot of people are claiming that its performance leaves a lot to be desired, and even IGN, they went so far as to say that its performance is a disaster in handheld mode. Now, it is important to keep in mind that we don't have a release date for this game just yet, so they could always improve it by the time it releases, or, you know, they could even delay it if need be. So there's not necessarily a guarantee that this will be a problem by the time it launches, but either which way, this isn't exactly a great sign, if anything else. Now, I will say that Elden Ring runs fairly well on platforms like the Steam Deck, so theoretically, the Switch 2 should be able to run it just fine, but at the same time, From Software games do have a reputation for optimization problems. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens with all this as time goes on, but hopefully it'll end up well because this is just too good of a game to launch in a poor state. Now, like I said at the top of the video, Xbox did have a few surprises today that I think fans should absolutely pay attention to. One is for Xbox Game Pass because they just randomly dropped Rogue of Prince of Persia. So you can actually play this one right now as we speak, and I mean, it might not be the big 3D Prince of Persia game that fans have been craving, but it's still an interesting take for a franchise that we've been begging for a very long time. Of course, it's a 2D roguelike, but it's been on Steam for a little while now, and it's received a lot of strong reception. Currently has an 88% approval rate, so yeah, fans seem to really enjoy it, and the fact that it's now available in something like Game Pass, I mean, a lot more people are now going to get an opportunity to try it out for themselves, and I do think that's a big problem for this game. Ubisoft has been charging $30, and I think that has kind of limited its reach, but that's the beauty of something like Game Pass. Now 30+ million subscribers are going to get the opportunity to try it out for themselves, and if fans like it enough, then they'll spread good word of mouth. That's not quite all, though, because Xbox and Square Enix also surprisingly announced the shadow launch of Triangle Strategy. This was previously a Nintendo console exclusive, and a very good one at that, but as we kind of know, Square Enix is committing to a more multi-platform future going forward, and that does include games that are exclusive on Nintendo. People sometimes overlook that fact, but it wasn't just Final Fantasy on PlayStation that was exclusive. Games like Octopath Traveler, Bravely Default 2, and Triangle Strategy as well all launched as Switch exclusives last generation. And I mean, none of them were as big as the Final Fantasy franchise, so you can understand it a little bit more just from a business perspective. They are all great handheld experiences, and Nintendo can, help market their reach. But regardless of the platform, these are all excellent games I'm sure fans will enjoy on whichever platform they prefer. So what I'll say here is that if you like strategy games, like Final Fantasy Tactics as one such example, this is actually one of the better games that the genre has to offer. It was actually partially inspired by Final Fantasy Tactics. And here's the thing, just like our previous topic, Triangle Strategy is actually available right now as we speak, and this also includes a PlayStation 5 version as well. It even has a 30% discount until September 4th, so definitely check it out if you like tactical strategy RPGs. Okay, so let's go and get into Xbox's big Gamescom announcement, and that is for the Xbox ROG Ally. They're putting a lot of focus on this device at Gamescom, which kind of tells me that they do view this as an important piece of hardware for their lineup. And okay, you can make an argument that every new piece of hardware is important, but there are varying degrees to that. I'm going to use the Xbox MetaQuest as one such example. It recently got announced and everybody just simply moved on. But for the Xbox Ally, they are putting some legitimate work behind its advertising, and more importantly, into the Windows experience. They are using this device as kind of their way to transform Windows into a legitimate gaming experience for these PC gaming handhelds, which single-handedly, I would say, has been one of the biggest problems for these Windows handhelds these past few years. I've already had a ROG Ally, and I also have a Steam Deck as well, and I'll tell you right now that I do prefer the Steam Deck just because personally, I think that it gives you the better overall user experience. It might not necessarily be as powerful as something like the ROG Ally X, but it does give you a very good user experience. It just feels more like a turn on and play console, whereas the ROG Ally being just so intertwined with Windows, it just doesn't feel as intuitive. Now, Asus has done some things to improve that experience with things like Armory Crate, but it's not perfect. So that's where Xbox comes in. The Xbox ROG Ally is kind of Microsoft's first real attempt at fixing that problem, and they dived into that today. The Xbox Ally has what they like to call the Xbox full screen experience, or the Xbox experience on handheld. In other words, they're centering a lot of its focus on the Xbox user face to make it feel more like a console. This will also include things like handheld optimized games. Now, if you have the Steam Deck, then you might recognize that feature, but basically, they'll tag games on their store to let you know right away if a game is optimized for the Steam Deck, and now the Xbox Ally has something like that as well. They're also putting a lot of work into the Play Anywhere experience, so for compatible games within your Xbox library, you can play them on your Xbox console and then carry that experience over to your Xbox Ally and just kind of pick up where you left off thanks to cloud saves. And admittedly, I think that's one of the most underrated consumer-friendly options that the market currently has to offer. With most companies, you have to buy your digital games twice if you want to play them on two different devices. But Xbox for years has been offering a single digital license for a lot of their digital games. So that's going to be a great feature for a platform like this. But I do think that this next part is important to understand. If you already have a ROG Ally, or if you have a ROG Ally X, you might be asking yourself, should you buy into this? And my answer to that would be no, because even though the full screen Xbox experience will launch first on the Xbox Ally, The original ROG Ally and the ROG Ally X will get updates in the future that will also give them that same experience. Now, you'll have to wait a little bit longer for that experience, but I mean, other than that, these are very similar devices. So from my point of view, the Xbox Ally is more so targeting fans that don't already have a ROG Ally and also like the Xbox experience. So that is worth keeping in mind, but I'd say overall, I think they're doing a lot of the right things. They are trying to improve that PC handheld experience, and hopefully this will be the first step of many more to come, because these type of devices truly do have a lot of potential going forward. Now, if you are interested in the Xbox Ally, though, it will be out on October 16th. That is now official, but currently we still don't have an official price. Unfortunately, they delayed the price because of, in their words, macroeconomic conditions, but they will have more information in the coming weeks, and as soon as we get that, I'll keep you posted. Currently, though, the league price is $550 for the base Xbox Ally and $900 for the Xbox Ally X. Now, speaking of price, it's crazy that I have to say this yet again, but here we are, and Sony is once again raising the price for the PlayStation 5 in the United States. I mean, I remember a time when consoles decreased in price over time, but this generation has by far been the strangest generation ever. It's been filled with live service games that nobody asked for, crazy budgets, long development times, and yeah, the frequent price hikes as well. So if you already thought the PlayStation 5 Pro was expensive, I mean, just you wait, because here's the new prices that will take place starting tomorrow on August 21st. Every PS5 SKU is going up, which means the PS5 digital will now be $500, the PS5 physical will be $550, and then the PS5 Pro will be a shocking $750. Little did we know that we were all paying at a discount when these consoles first launched. A good investment, I guess you can say, but this is a very frustrating situation for fans. Gaming is becoming a lot less accessible, and we've seen it all generation long. Price hikes for consoles, price hikes for games, for subscriptions, and at times even for accessories. So I'm not even surprised by this point. I think it's just disappointing because I know that gaming has become a lot less accessible. Now, a lot of the conversation will center on inflation and now tariffs this year as well, but this is definitely not a new thing for this generation. It's been happening on an almost yearly basis, and I want to point out the price for the PlayStation 5 Pro specifically, because today the conversation is about the PlayStation 5. But it's not going to be all that long before that conversation shifts over to next generation consoles like the PlayStation 6. I mean, if the PS5 Pro is $750, what exactly does that mean for the eventual PlayStation 6? I mean, even if you look at the Xbox Series X, that's a $600 console now. The Switch 2, that's $450, and a lot of people thought that was blasphemous. So what will next generation consoles look like? How expensive are they going to be? Because it kind of feels like the console makers are pricing a lot of people out of this hobby. So it's unfortunate to see, and the thing is that there's a very real chance that these won't be the last price hikes for this generation. There's still that potential chance for $80 games. Xbox previously tried that. Thankfully, they backtracked on that. And then there's also potential price hikes for things like accessories as well. So, I mean, I guess we'll see. Anyways, though, that's going to be for this episode. But until next time, make sure to subscribe, ring that bell, and peace out.